Nate's world turned upside down, literally, as he dangled from a line of cargo boxes, swaying precariously from an open plane. Struggling to climb back inside, he fought off mercenaries who wanted him gone for good. Just as he managed to pull himself into the plane, a red car roared toward him, sending him tumbling back into the sky. He fell fast, the ground rushing up to meet him, but at the last second, a hand grabbed his, saving him from certain death. The moment mirrored a memory from years ago, a time when his older brother Sam had caught him in a similar fall. Young Nate and Sam, two orphan brothers with nothing but each other, sneaked into a Boston museum, chasing an ancient treasure map tied to Magellan's expedition. But their daring heist ended in disaster. A triggered alarm brought the police, and the boys were dragged back to their orphanage. For Nate, it was just another bad night. For Sam, it was the end of the line. 3 strikes meant prison. The brothers were given one last moment to say goodbye, and Sam used it to escape. Before disappearing into the night, he handed Nate his cherished ring and promised to return someday. Left behind, Nate discovered a hidden message from Sam, written in invisible ink, and he clung to that small piece of hope. Years passed, and Nate built a life in New York, working as a bartender by day and honing his pickpocketing skills by night. His brother's lighter, now barely working, remained his constant companion. That evening, while closing the bar, a smooth-talking man named Sully confronted him. Sully praised Nate's skills and pitched him a big job. Suspicious and unwilling to partner with a stranger, Nate turned him away. But Sully had the last laugh, swiping the bracelet Nate had just stolen and leaving behind only a business card. Frustrated, Nate tracked Sully down, sneaking into his apartment to reclaim the bracelet. Inside, he discovered something far more shocking: the original Magellan map. Sully revealed the Moncada family's centuries-old quest for a legendary treasure and mentioned a surprising connection. He had worked with Sam. According to Sully, Sam vanished after they uncovered Magellan's journal, leaving Sully with no leads. Nate, hiding the fact that Sam had sent him postcards over the years, dismissed the idea of a reunion. The brother he once knew was gone, or so he claimed. But back at his apartment, Nate opened a box of memories, pulling out Sam's old postcards and the ring. Memories of their adventures and lost promises stirred him. Wearing the ring as a necklace, Nate decided he wasn't just after treasure, he was seeking answers. And he was ready. Sully and Nate teamed up for their first big move, stealing an ancient cross that served as a key to unlock the chamber hiding the legendary gold. The catch: the cross was up for auction, and the room would be crawling with security. Nate insisted on an equal share of the gold before getting to work, spending his free time studying the auction venue and crafting a plan. On the night of the auction, the stakes skyrocketed. Among the elite attendees was Santiago Moncada, a powerful man who believed the gold was his birthright. Worse, he wasn't alone. His mercenary leader, Joe, was with him, a dangerous woman who had a past with Sully and seemed eager to remind him. As the event began, Sully posed as a wealthy bidder, while Nate prepared to sneak into the building's electrical room to kill the power. But Joe, sharp and suspicious, quickly noticed Nate lurking around and sent her men to shadow him. Slipping past the guards, Nate used a stick of gum to disable the digital lock and entered the electrical room. The plan was simple: cut the lights, create chaos, and let Sully swipe the cross in the dark. But simple plans rarely stay that way. Nate's delay forced Sully to bid against Santiago, who was ready to throw down a fortune. Sully didn't have the money to back up his bluff, but he had no choice but to keep bidding to stall for time. Meanwhile, Joe's men cornered Nate, triggering a fight. Nate threw punches and dodged blows before making a break for it, leaping onto the hall's hanging lamps to create a wild distraction. The room erupted into panic as chandeliers swung and glass shattered. Security scrambled to regain control, and the cross was quickly moved to safety. Thinking fast, Sully flipped his jacket inside out to pose as a worker. As Nate evaded guards, Sully slipped away with the cross, claiming he was transporting it to the vault. Joe, however, wasn't fooled. She cornered Sully with a blade in hand, ready to end the game right there. But before she could strike, security arrived, mistaking her for an assailant attacking an employee. Sully seized the moment to escape as Joe was forced to fend off the guards. When Sully reached his car, Nate was already there, bruised but grinning. With the cross in hand and adrenaline pumping, they decided to head straight to Spain. On the plane, Nate flips through the captain's journal, confirming the legend. Magellan discovered a massive stash of gold in the Philippines, hid it in Barcelona, and lied to the Moncada family, saying there was nothing. The journal's clues hint at the gold's location, but all they have to go on is a vague mention of a tree. In Barcelona, Nate and Sully meet Chloe, another treasure hunter who has the second cross they need. But Chloe doesn't trust Sully, calling him a liar and a backstabber. Before they can convince her otherwise, she steals their cross and bolts. Nate chases her through the busy streets, but can't catch her before she reaches her car. Still, Sully and Nate corner her with a clever argument. She may have both crosses, but only they have the journal that points to the gold. Reluctantly, Chloe agrees to team up. The clue in the journal leads them to a church, its name tied to a pine tree. They plan to break in that night. Later, Chloe presses Sully for answers, suspecting Nate is Sam's brother. She demands Sully tell him the truth about Sam, but Sully brushes her off, saying the time isn't right. At night, Nate, Sully, and Chloe sneak into the church, blending in with the tourists. Nate is startled to find the postcards sold there, match Sam once sent him. Using symbols carved into the walls, they locate a hidden button that reveals a painting of hell and, beneath it, keyholes for the crosses. Nate and Chloe insert the keys and turn them clockwise, triggering a trap that launches poison darts. They dodge just in time and try the other direction, finally uncovering a secret tunnel. The journal warns that one must stay in heaven while the others venture down in hell. Nate and Chloe descend into the tunnel with one cross, leaving Sully above with the other. Nate attaches a tracker to his phone so Sully can follow their progress. But as Sully moves into position, he's unaware that Joe is silently trailing him, ready to strike. Nate and Chloe follow a winding tunnel that leads them straight into a nightclub, only to discover Joe's men lurking there too. To blend in, they pretend to dance their way across the crowded room, heading for the bar. Nate fumbles with Sam's lighter, trying to create a distraction, but it fails again. Chloe steps in, sparks the flame, and they use the fire as cover to work on a puzzle carved behind the bar. However, Joe's men spot them before they can finish. A fight breaks out, forcing Nate to hold them off while Chloe desperately searches for another keyhole. Just as the enemies close in, Chloe finds the hidden lock, inserts the cross, and triggers the opening of another secret tunnel. They dive in, narrowly escaping before the passage seals shut behind them, leaving Joe's men stranded. The tunnel leads them to an ancient door hidden beneath a fountain. Using the key, they activate the mechanism, but instead of opening, the room begins to flood rapidly. Above ground, Sully spots their predicament. He realizes the second keyhole is protected by thick glass and begins smashing it, but Joe arrives to stop him. A brutal fight breaks out. Joe gains the upper hand at first, but Sully counters with a swift move, slamming her into the glass, shattering it. He quickly uses the cross to unlock the mechanism and opens the door, allowing Nate to escape. But when Nate notices Chloe is unconscious underwater, he dives back to save her. Once they're both safe, Chloe is surprised by Nate's willingness to risk himself for her. The newly opened door leads to a Roman antechamber, where Chloe lights a torch after Nate's lighter fails yet again. Sully watches them from above through a drainage grate and spots another carved symbol. It indicates both keys are needed to progress further. Sully throws his cross down to Nate, who combines the keys to open yet another hidden door. This one leads to an ancient Roman storehouse filled with massive urns. For a moment, they believe they've found the gold. But when the urns break, all they find is salt. Among the scattered remains, they uncover a map detailing a route from Spain to the East Indies. Before they can process their discovery, Chloe pulls a gun on Nate, demanding the map. She coldly tells him he doesn't know the full truth about Sam and knocks him out before fleeing with the map. Sully finds Nate moments later and revives him. Furious, Nate demands answers. Sully reluctantly admits the truth. Sam didn't disappear on his own. They had found the captain's tomb and the journal together, but Joe's men ambushed them. Sam was shot, and Sully fled, leaving him behind. Nate realizes Sully recruited him not for sentimental reasons, but because he was Sam's brother and would likely know critical clues to finding the gold. Nate, frustrated with Sully's greed and selfishness, decides to break their partnership and walks away. But later, Sully tracks him down, trying to patch things up. Nate agrees to return, not because of Sully, but because he feels compelled to finish what his brother, Sam, started. Meanwhile, Joe reports to Santiago about the latest setbacks, only to discover that Chloe is secretly working for Santiago too. Since Chloe has been more effective, Santiago puts her in charge, leaving Joe furious. At Santiago's private airport, his team prepares for the next leg of their mission. His prized red car becomes the perfect hiding spot for Nate and Sully, who sneak into the trunk. As the plane takes off, Santiago gives a fiery speech about restoring his family's honor. But before he can finish, Joe shocks everyone by killing him. Chloe panics and tries to flee, but Joe orders her men to capture her. In the chaos, Nate and Sully seize the chance to recover the map. Their escape plan involves stealing parachutes and jumping off the plane. However, in the cargo hold, Nate confronts Joe, demanding to know if she really killed Sam. This delays him, and Sully leaps out with a parachute while Nate is left fighting Joe's men as loose cargo is thrown out of the plane. The fight pushes Nate toward the beginning of the story, with him clinging to falling cargo midair. Meanwhile, Chloe finds herself cornered in a gunfight with Joe's men. She improvises by driving Santiago's red car straight out of the plane. When Nate manages to climb back inside, Chloe surprises him by shoving him out again, but only to save him. She grabs his hand mid-fall, guiding him onto a cargo box. Together, they deploy its parachute and safely land in the sea. The duo drifts until waves carry them to the Philippines. Using Sully's credit card, they check into a hotel. Chloe prints a map to study its dimensions while Nate pores over Sam's postcards. He realizes the map alone isn't enough to find the treasure. Sam must have left one final clue. Determined, Nate works through the night deciphering the messages. Chloe eventually gives up and heads to bed, but Nate's persistence pays off. Using a candle, he uncovers a hidden message on one of the postcards. It instructs him to use the crosses as a compass. Nate tests the method and finally discovers the coordinates of the gold. Relieved and excited, he writes them down before finally getting some rest. The next morning, Chloe wakes up before Nate and finds the coordinates he had written down. Deciding to make her move, she takes the note and sneaks away, leaving Nate behind. However, when Nate wakes up alone, he's not surprised. He had anticipated her betrayal and deliberately left fake coordinates. Confident in his plan, he grabs a motorboat and heads to the real location, a hidden cave, while Chloe and Joe waste time searching the wrong area. Unbeknownst to Nate, Joe spots him from afar as she realizes her current location is incorrect. Inside the cave, Nate dives into an underwater tunnel. The chilly, dark waters make him uneasy, but he pushes through and emerges in another hidden cavern. There, he discovers a breathtaking sight: the two ancient ships of Magellan, untouched and filled with gold. Just as he begins to take it all in, Sully arrives, having tracked him using the phone's GPS. Sully tells Nate that Sam would have been proud, but their reunion is cut short when Joe and her men burst in. Nate and Sully quickly hide inside a secret compartment as Joe's crew uses helicopters to lift the massive ships through a hole in the cave ceiling. Once the coast is clear, the duo emerges, grabbing as much gold as they can and arming themselves with a dagger and a sword. Climbing up to the ship's deck, they engage in a brutal fight, taking down Joe's men one by one and throwing them overboard. Sully sees his chance and climbs the chains leading to one of the helicopters. He wrestles control from the crew, tossing them out and piloting the chopper. Joe, furious, orders her own pilot to follow. But the pursuit turns chaotic as Joe's ship collides with the one Sully is flying. Her men jump aboard Nate's ship, forcing him into another round of combat. Using his quick thinking, Nate seizes their guns and finds barrels of gunpowder, sparking a new plan. Meanwhile, Sully tries to navigate through a narrow canyon, attempting to shake off Joe's relentless pursuit. At the canyon's exit, Joe's helicopter blocks his path, forcing Sully into a dangerous maneuver to avoid a collision. But Joe remains on their tail, leaving Nate to take drastic action. With the gunpowder and one of the ship's ancient cannons, Nate loads a cannonball. After several failed attempts to light it with Sam's unreliable lighter, he finally fires. The cannonball strikes Joe's helicopter, sending it spiraling out of control. Joe leaps off her ship just before it crashes into a nearby hill in a fiery explosion. For a moment, Nate and Sully think it's over, but Joe isn't finished and releases the anchor, preventing their escape. The ship creaks ominously, unable to withstand the strain. Joe and Nate exchange furious blows as the ship tilts dangerously. Desperate to save Nate, Sully makes a bold decision. He hurls his precious bag of gold at Joe, knocking her off balance and into the ocean. Sully pulls Nate into the helicopter just as the chains snap and the ship plummets, crushing Joe beneath it. The ship briefly floats before it begins sinking, taking any hope of recovering the treasure with it. As they fly away, Nate and Sully spot Philippine naval units approaching, ensuring the treasure will end up in the government's hands. Sully groans about their bad luck, but Nate smirks and reveals gold bars he had hidden in his pants. Sully bursts into laughter as they spot Chloe pursuing them on a motorboat in vain.